Welcome to the Diversity Connector podcast, where we explore the rich tapestry of human experiences. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and together as we dive into conversations that bridge cultures, challenge stereotypes, and celebrate the unique perspectives each of us brings to the table. Each episode is a journey through stories and insights from a kaleidoscope of voices, each sharing their colorful narrative. Whether you're at home, on the go, or just anywhere in between, you're now part of a community that values understanding, inclusivity, and the beauty of diversity. So plug in your headphones, get comfortable, and let's connect through the power of our shared stories. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Diversity Connector podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Diversity Connector. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hi, I'm Kelli Richards. I am the President and Chief Connections Officer at the All Access Group, based in Silicon Valley in Cupertino, California. I have been a visionary and a leader in bridging the worlds of Hollywood and Silicon Valley throughout my entire career. I'm also a trusted advisor to established creatives, musicians, filmmakers, as well as, and most prominently, tech innovators and progressive forward-thinking individuals that thrive on emerging technologies. So I also work with founders and entrepreneurs in that capacity. My journey began here in Cupertino. I am a native Californian, native Cupertino. Probably from about the age of 8 was when I first got prompted with a nudging for what I would do with my career and my passion. It was watching a gentleman named George Martin behind the Beatles, who turned out to be their record producer and who some would call the fifth Beatle. I didn't know exactly what he was doing because I was so young, but I could tell he was critical in managing the magic behind the band and facilitating that magic. And it really caught my attention. So I studied to be a record producer in high school, thinking that was going to be my career path. But another fateful occurrence happened in high school when I was 16 years old. Again, having grown up here in Cupertino, this is the home of Apple's world headquarters. Steve Jobs was like the Willy Wonka visionary here in town. And I was challenged in high school in a group I was a member of called Future Business Leaders of America to approach and secure a mentor that was inspiring to me in business. And I chose Steve, and I did approach him in one of our local coffee shops, and we had a brief conversation. I told him what was happening, and I asked if he'd be open to being my mentor. After asking me a few carefully thought questions and sizing me up, he agreed to do that, which of course had a indelible impact on the rest of my career journey and actually how I view and operate in the world, in life, as you can well imagine. So that started me on my journey of really embracing and working with the convergence of cutting edge technologies and content creators, and working with progressive, innovative thinkers and creatives and genius types, which I've been privileged to do throughout my career. I went on to become I couldn't get work as a record producer when I finished college because I was the wrong gender. It was a lockout profession for women at that time. So I wound up going to work out of the Capitol Records Tower in Hollywood, the famous round building, as a young record label exec for a couple of years, where I started understanding the recording process, the whole production process, the music industry at large, and building my network of people in that industry, as well as what would become ultimately hundreds of major artists that I would build relationships with. And after a couple of years, I got tapped by colleagues at Apple to actually come to Apple to launch the focus on music and entertainment. They thought I was the perfect person to do it, given a lot of these people knew me. My roots were in Cupertino, as was my family and fiance. And I had had industry experience at that point, which nobody else at Apple corporate had. So I did do that. Steve was not there at the time. He was off running Next and Pixar. But I wound up building out this focus on music and entertainment at Apple, building all the relationships, working on all the marketing campaigns, and spent the better part of a decade plus at the company. When Steve came back, the company was 1 quarter away from running out of money. And he basically advised me I'd be better off leaving at that point, as painful as that was going to be for me, because there wasn't going to be a focus on music and entertainment while he got the company healthy and back on its feet. And as it turns out, that wouldn't happen for another 5 years, the focus that Apple did with launching iTunes. But in any event, I did go out on my own at that point, became a consultant to all manner of funded startups and all the way to Fortune 100 companies as a strategist and business development super connector, helping these companies to plot their course, stay out of trouble, do creative problem solving, and connect them to decision makers and artists and others in the convergence of tech and media, music, that they otherwise would never have access to. And that began my company's launch, which has been, as I say, over 25 years now. And then I added the trusted advisor role, which I now do more of these days, working one-on-one between creatives in the media world, artists, as well as tech innovators, founders, and entrepreneurs in the tech world. And I help them navigate and plot their next course of where they're headed next in life and in work. And I help them with strategy, possibilities, and ideas they never would have thought of for themselves. And of course, access to my very broad and deep network as a super connector, which can help accelerate where they say they want to go with the right relationships, the right introductions. I've also been a thought leader, podcast host, an author, published author of several books. And I've also been channeling that producer energy as a talent producer for several decades on award shows and celebrity fundraiser events. So that's a little bit about my journey to this point.
Wow. What a journey you've been on, Kelli. This is absolutely fantastic. Your career spans over 25 years at the intersect of tech, music, and entertainment industries. So how do you believe the synergy between these sectors has evolved? And where do you see it heading in the next decade?
Well, in the beginning of my journey, when I was first trying to bring these industries together, there was no compatibility at all. They were different worlds. They spoke different languages. They had different business models, different ways of doing business. The entertainment world didn't understand technology and frankly was afraid that it was going to put them out of business. The tech world didn't understand music and the entertainment industry, didn't understand the business models, didn't know how to work with creative talent. So the first part of my journey was helping to educate and facilitate both sides on how to understand each other and how to work together effectively. Of course, a lot's changed along the way, especially, I would say, in the last 20 years, especially since streaming kicked off. But in terms of where things are headed, now the people that I worked with in those early days, my colleagues, are running the record labels and media companies. And they're heavily focused on digital distribution and streaming. Where it's heading, again, relies on technology to do nothing less than reshape the content landscape. And again, as it has always been with emerging technologies, Hollywood is at first scared like they are right now around artificial intelligence, AI.
Yes.
And at some point, they'll embrace the technology as a tool to help them make even better stories, do better storytelling, and be able to work faster, smarter, less expensive, in a more economical fashion. And they won't be so frightened. That is a common thread. Every time we come out with a new product, a new piece of software, a new technology, the media industry tends to freeze and get scared. But ultimately they realize, and they wind up usually embracing these technologies as a new revenue stream and a new way to do business, a new way to engage their audiences.
Now, you talk about a growth mindset as a critical factor for success. Can you share an example from your experience where a growth mindset made a significant difference in a project or a client's trajectory?
Well, I deal with this all the time in my role as a trusted advisor. Some people have limited belief systems about what they can accomplish. They don't give themselves permission to live the way they would choose to in an ideal set of circumstances, and to have freedom in terms of how they operate in the world. They've grown up with limitations, blinders, blind spots, labels. And so part of the work I do with these folks to begin with is help them unpack all of that, effectively holding up a mirror to the reality of who they really are and the fact that they do have choice and possibilities in how they operate in business and in life.
So, with your expertise in innovation and strategy, can you shed light on a time when a creative or unexpected approach solved a complex problem for a client or within your own business?
I don't have a quick answer for that. That's a complicated question. Maybe we could break it down into a couple of sections.
It's all about innovation and creativity.
Well, I will say one thing that comes to mind as I think about it, Gertrude, and that is when I first left Apple to go out on my own, it was some years ago now, over 25 years ago, I could readily see that with the internet, which was just taking off around that time, and a laptop, I could literally choose to work from anywhere in the world. Yes. And as long as I managed time zones, I'd be fine. I was a forerunner to the notion of remote workers, but nobody would embrace that. They actually ostracized me, thinking, how dare I go live in Hawaii, which I chose to do. And they thought I was off sitting on the beach and drinking Mai Tais because they couldn't imagine that I could stay on California time and work just as effectively, in fact, more productively, without all manner of disruptive meetings and bureaucracy. And that's exactly what I did. And then fast forward to what happened during the pandemic, when a whole legion of companies and workers embraced remote work as a new reality. So I think part of my challenge with what I've done is I've always been a visionary. And it sounds glamorous, but there's also a lot of pain in being one. In that, we wind up, I call it the curse of the visionary. We wind up living inside a crystal ball, seeing very clearly how a technology or several technologies or how a new way of working and new revenue models can serve people more effectively at scale, but then having to wait years, if not decades, for the world to catch up with that vision. That's a very painful way to live.
That can't be easy. So your role as a super connector is intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain what that entails and perhaps share a story about a connection that you facilitated that led to an extraordinary outcome?
Absolutely. First of all, what it is what it sounds like. Someone who's exceptionally well connected in the world, especially in the business world. And in my world, I built my network relationship by relationship, one brick at a time. And people often say, if you had one secret of your success, what would it be? It would be my network. These relationships that have stood the test of time, built on honesty and integrity and a genuine care and concern for the other person, and these colleagues and clients that I've had, these collaborators. And so because of that, and because of the opportunities I've had that a lot of people haven't, working with big talent, big innovators, I've built, just this massive network of relationships, and they're not just, one dimensional. I can reach out to people that I have not been in touch with for many years, and have done this for my clients. And the person that I'm reaching out to will just pick up like no time has stopped at all. For example, I had a client that had a need to do business with Amazon for their devices business, their hardware, their Echo devices, et cetera, some years ago. And it turns out the gentleman in charge of that division was someone I worked with at Apple. He was an alum of mine. Okay. And we had not been in touch for easily 15 years. And I reached out to him about this opportunity. He responded immediately, effusively. He was so happy to hear from me. And of course, he took the meeting with these people, and they were able to get a deal done. Fast forward to just a couple months ago, this gentleman, whose name is Dave Limp, announced he was leaving Amazon. Wow, where was he going with a job like that, the one that he had at Amazon? What was going to happen here? And within a week, I got my answer. He had been reporting to Jeff Bezos at Amazon for all those years. Now, Jeff had tapped him to be the CEO of Blue Origin, which is Bezos' space company.
Oh, wow.
So now my colleague Dave, who I worked with all these years ago at Apple, is now the CEO of this big space company. And that's the power of the network, is that the relationships stay intact no matter where these people go over time.
Yeah.
And it's always incumbent on me when I make an introduction between people as a super connector to be sure there's value in it for both sides, or yes. I will not make that connection. I hope that answers your question on that one, Gertrude.
It definitely does. And that was a really good example. So you assist your clients in reinventing themselves or their brands. Mm-hmm. Can you walk us through your process of guiding someone from personal transformation or brand reinvention?
Yeah, the truth is it's not a cookie cutter process. There isn't a 10-step process. I work with my clients in a very high touch, customized, individualistic way based on their own circumstances and their own journey. So first, I find out where their pain points and challenges are. I get an understanding and a curiosity for what has led them to where they are now on their journey. Where their passions are that aren't being tapped and how they might be, where they think they're going, and some ideas I might have that they haven't thought of for where they could go next. And then we work on dismantling all of these old limiting beliefs and labels and, cages they found themselves in through no fault of their own. Maybe just being unconscious about what's going on, because it's hard to see when you're the picture in the frame, it's hard to see clearly. You need the person holding the picture out to say, this is what I see. Yes. And then once we've worked with a lot of the internal stuff, then we, and often in tandem, work with their business activities, figure out what makes sense for where they're heading next, the strategies that would be optimal to get them there, and the relationships and connections they might need to accelerate where they say they want to go.
Okay. Wow. So the concept of moving from success to significance and living one's legacy today is really powerful. Can you give us an example of a client who has successfully done this transition?
Sure. That's something I deal with on a regular basis. I had a client who was a very talented female executive at one of the big tech companies in Silicon Valley, but she was being held back. They weren't acknowledging and validating her real strengths, talents, passions, and contributions. And she was a real go-getter. So she was very frustrated. We started working together. What she wanted to do was be the CEO of a startup in her chosen field, which was automotive, not typically a field that was friendly to most women. And within the space of a few months, she in fact had left this tech company and was the CEO of an automotive startup. That was a fairly rapid transition, but then that's when, the fire got turned up. She needed my help to deal with all manner of, team related issues, things she needed to know about being a CEO that she'd never had to deal with before, and basically have me help her navigate day to day some of the minefields she was progressing through with the board and the employees and the customers and all of that. So that's a great example of a transition, and we just really got started when she got what she said she wanted.
Well, that's awesome. So, as someone who helps leaders and innovators enter new markets, what are the key factors you assess when determining the viability of a new market for a client?
A new market for them. Well, first of all, I'm very discerning about who I choose to take on as a client at all. They have to have certain characteristics themselves, like a willingness to lean in and be committed to change, addressing challenging issues, embracing new ways of doing things, a welcoming of ideas, possibilities, and my input about what they could do to improve their situation. But beyond that, then, as it relates to exploring new markets, we look at trends, we look at the competition in a given marketplace, we look at the health of that sector, and then we start to plot, okay, with all those things in mind, where does this company fit in? Where does it want to go? What makes sense? It's almost like the company has a personality and a life of its own that needs to be helped, shaped, molded, etc. And then the leadership and driving the culture of the company internally, as well as setting the direction for the business out and what wants to happen over a given period of time. I hope that answers that question.
Yes, it certainly does. So you're very selective, and I can hear that you're driven to make your clients successful. If you don't see that potential, you won't even go there.
Yeah, they really have to be, they really have to have certain characteristics before I decide if I want to even work with them. So they're discerning as well, deciding if I'm the right fit. There has to be a good fit between us. There has to be great rapport.
Yes.
And we really have to get each other and understand that before we decide if we're going to move forward together.
Now, you've worked with a diverse set of clients, from corporate executives to musicians and celebrities.
And founders and entrepreneurs who are still on the rise. Yeah.
Right. What common threads do you find in all your clients that drives them towards seeking transformational growth?
Oh, well, they understand that they are only able to progress to a certain level without assistance and guidance. They're open to input, feedback, insights. They're typically lifelong learners and seekers like myself. Yeah. They're open-minded. They're critical thinkers. They're committed to their own success and that of their companies or their ventures. And they're willing to work to clear obstacles in their way, internally and externally. So all of those things are certainly in place for virtually all of my clients.
Fantastic. Now, our listeners are aspiring entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and leaders in different industries. What is one piece of advice that you could give them to help them navigate unknown territory and bridge the gaps in their own industries?
I would say the most important thing is know what you don't know. Know what your strengths and talents are, and be very clear about what areas you need help with, and be very diligent about securing the right team around you, the right team as your founding team if you're putting a company together, as well as the external team, the advisors, the board members, the legal people. The people that you surround yourself with will play a huge role in how successful you personally are, as well as how the company is. But the biggest mistake you can make is putting all those wonderful people together around you and not listening to them. There are people that have more expertise than you do. They're a little further down the road. They've been a part of startups or big companies or both. And they've done their share of deals. So really, I find that pride and arrogance can be the most significant downfall for first-time or early founders or early-stage entrepreneurs.
Now, you have been in spaces that most women will probably never get to experience. If there is a younger woman who's listening to this podcast right now, aspiring to be someone like you, if I could take you back to your younger self, what 3 nuggets of wisdom would you have wanted somebody to impart before you started on this journey?
I would say if there's some kind of burning passion inside you that feels like it might be a compass nudging you and helping to shape where you might be headed, honor that. Don't bury it. Don't let other people talk you out of it, especially if you have a lot of conviction around it. Secondly, definitely seek a mentor in the field that you think you want to pursue who has been successful in that field or fields and who you think might be open to advising and mentoring you. And then don't be afraid to reach out and approach those individuals or that person, like I did with Steve, for example. And I think the third thing is make sure that you do surround yourself with the knowledge and the support. Learn everything you can about the space you want to be, you want to excel in, and then bring in the people around you, family, friends, colleagues, and most importantly, mentors and advisors who can really help on the path and keep you out of trouble.
That's great advice. Now, as a multidimensional thinker, you view the world with a lens that not many have the ability to see the world. What advice would you give, again, entrepreneurs, people who are trying to change the world in some way so they can see things from different perspectives? Is there a process, a way that we can improve how we're looking at things?
It's a good question, Gertrude. I mean, I feel like you either have it or you don't inherently. I don't think you can train somebody to be a multidimensional thinker per se. Having said that, it comes back to being open-minded, curious, being willing to look at things holistically, spiritually, logically, practically, scientifically, asking good questions like, what if? What if we did something this way? What if we tried something that way? And being willing to think outside the box, or again, bringing people around you who can, so that you're not stuck in a certain track that may or may not be the right path for you or your company.
So what are your parting thoughts for us this morning, Kelli? You've given us so much already. What are your parting thoughts?
Honor your passion, guidance, your internal compass. Don't be afraid to pursue things you're passionate about. Keep your focus on the difference you want to make as opposed to making a lot of money as your driving force, because the money follows the passion. And surround yourself with good people who have more experience than you do, that you feel good about and feel that they can and will support you towards your own success.
Kelli, I could talk to you all morning. Thank you so much for coming online and sharing with us today. Your story is truly inspiring.
Thank you, Gertrude. Thank you for having me. It's been my pleasure to be with you.
And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Diversity Connector is bringing you some amazing people from all over the world, sharing their knowledge, their stories, their skills. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And bye for now. Thank you, Kelli. And that's a wrap, everybody, on today's episode of the Diversity Connector podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our vibrant and global conversation. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a tapestry of diverse perspectives. Remember, every story you've heard today is a thread in the larger fabric of our shared humanity. So, as you step back into your world, carry these stories with you and let them inspire you to embrace and celebrate the rich diversity around us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these inspiring stories with more listeners. Do follow us on social media by looking for the Diversity Connector podcast for more updates. Until then, keep connecting, keep listening, and keep celebrating the beauty of diversity. This is the Diversity Connector podcast signing off. Stay curious, stay open, and definitely stay